rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We're excited to share that we will be launching a new podcast series titled Meeting the Intellectuals. In this series, we will engage with various scholars, doctors, ulemas, and artists from our valley. But it's important to clarify that our aim is not to debate, rebuttal, or challenge these scholars, but rather to understand their perspectives and gain insights, even if our opinions differ. मतलब कि हम आर्टिस्ट से मिलेंगे, उलमा से मिलेंगे, हमारी वैलीज के मुख्तलिफ स्कॉलर से मिलेंगे, ये जानने के लिए कि मुख्तलिफ मौज़ूआत पर उनकी राय क्या है. हम यहाँ पर उनके साथ डिबेट करने नहीं बैठेंगे. Clients over cause, where effect is more prominent than cause.
Ghazali has given so many examples. He says that there may be many causes for one effect. There may be not one cause. Ijtihad, not in taqleed. So in this way, his knowledge and his thought is more than enough. It needs to be rediscovered.
अगरचे हमारी राय उनसे मुख्तलिफ भी हो सकती है या हमारे देखने वालों की राय भी उनसे मुख्तलिफ हो सकती है, तो आप अपनी राय बज़ाहिर अपने कमेंट्स में भी लिख सकते हो. कोशिश हमारी यही रहेगी कि बहुत से मौज़ूआत पर हम उनके इनसाइट्स को समझने की कोशिश करेंगे. थैंक यू वेरी मच. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and a very good afternoon to everyone. It's a great pleasure for me to introduce you people a distinguished scholar by the name of Professor Hamidullah Marazi alias Hamid Naseem Rafiabadi, a very distinguished figure in the field of Islamic studies, particularly in Sunni theology, with numerous publications to his name published in international journals as well as local journals. He has received many awards and is the author of more than a dozen books. He did his BA and MA from Aligarh Muslim University and PhD from the University of Kashmir in 1996. And the title of his thesis was Philosophy of Al-Ghazali and its Impact on Western Philosophers. He can write and speak in English, Arabic, Urdu and Persian besides his mother tongue, that's Kashmiri. He has held many posts which we will depict on the screen, that will be reflected on the screen. Notably, he remained HOD in the Kashmir University, and he was, let me introduce the posts which he had held. He was Head of Department of Religious Studies, School of Social Sciences, Dean, School of Media Studies, Central University of Kashmir. Also, Islamic Studies Lecturer, Reader, Associate Professor, Kashmir University. And Head of Department, University of Kashmir, Chairman, Board of Studies, Central University, Member Board of Studies, Maulana Azad Urdu University. And there's a list goes on and goes on. There's much more to follow. I will cut short it, but all details regarding Professor Sahab will be on the screen, inshallah, and you will be very happy. You will feel really pleasured to meet such a great personality of our own land, that's of our own Kashmir. Professor Sahab, before going into the discussion, actually I will love to start with the background of today's discussion or today's questions or today's interview, whatever we can call it. Sir, you are fully aware of the fact that many academics and Orientalists and even an American astrophysicist by the name of Neil deGrasse Tyson, he's an astrophysicist, he also claimed that it was Al-Ghazali whose work actually on the philosophy was the reason for the decline of science in the Islamic world. And there's one more Orientalist, Nuh, a mathematician by profession, he suggested that Al-Ghazali's book, The Incoherence of the Philosophers, published in 1059 BC, implied that philosophers could not provide rational explanation for physical or metaphysical questions and led to a rejection of critical thinking or scientific inquiry. Almost a century later, sir, you are knowing all these details, but still, let me refresh these things. Almost a century later, Ibn Rushd responded with Incoherence of the Incoherence, published in 1160 BC. The question was raised on the nature of causality. For example, can cotton burn by the divine will, or it has got its own property and nature? So, sir, our discussion is regarding this context, regarding the allegations. But there are certain philosophers and certain scientists. I can name one. There's one man by the name of George Saliba, an Arabic and Islamic science professor. Though the decline of scientific thought in Islam was not solely the fault of Al-Ghazali, it's what he claims. Sir, this is the context of our today's discussion, and for further enlightenment, we have prepared a question here. Sir, our first question goes like this. Sir, How does Imam Ghazali's emphasis on the will of Allah shape our understanding of divine providence and human actions?
Very nice questions and the introduction which you have given. Basically, there is a lot of misconception over Ghazali. He is the most misunderstood scholar, philosopher, scientist, and Sufi. Al-Ghazali was basically a Muslim theologian, but he had studied philosophy very deeply at Nishapur and at Jurjan and also at Baghdad. And he worked on philosophy for so many years, and he wrote several books on philosophy proper. For example, his book on philosophy, Maqasid al-Philosopher, which was considered in Europe as the metaphysics of Al-Ghazali, that was translated into different languages. And as Shibli Namani would say, that in West he is more famous as a philosopher than a theologian or a Sufi. But in the East, he is more famous as a theologian,
or a Sufi. Or a Sufi, yes, sir.
So, problem with the Ghazali is that people don't understand his actual contribution. Ghazali has never challenged science or philosophy or reason, but when he talks about will of God, that is prevailing everywhere, and no one can change the will of God because Allah has the will. Through will, He created the universe. إِذَا يَقُولُ شَيْءٍ كُن فَيَكُونُ. When He wants to create something, He can create. He has power. But it never means that He made humans subservient to the divine fatalism. He just wanted to say that the will of God prevails all along, but it never means that we should not act, we should not do our work.
Okay.
So that is just to show that we can't understand everything of God through reason. He just showed, like Bertrand Russell, as he has written books like Human Knowledge, Scope and Limits, and also our knowledge of the external world, that we have limits. Our philosophy has limit, our science has limit, our reason has limit. He showed the limitation of reason, that we can't understand the will of God through reason. But he never says that we should undermine the human will or human power.
Okay, sir. So if we go through his book, The Incoherence of Philosophy, he once stated that if we burn the cotton, it is because of the will of God. Ibn Rushd rejected the philosophy by saying that there is a particular or a definite mechanism behind the burning. You have to undergo through the proper mechanism. For example, he quoted an example. Ghazali quoted an example that imagine a magician who has a will to disappear the things. So if he is able to disappear the things, it is his will which is disappearing the things. So he's not mentioning the proper mechanism here. How Ibn Rushd rejected his theology, he said that it is the will of magicians, but the things are not disappearing properly. The things are altogether there. We have to focus on the proper mechanism, and the concept of scientific inquiry or the concept of critical thinking. Or do you feel, sir, that in any way by this philosophical argument of Imam Gazali, do we feel that the nature of truth and the nature of causality is anywhere challenged in this process?
Ghazali has never challenged causation as such. He says that there is always a supernatural cause. It is never, true as was, held by people like Ibn Sina and Al-Farabi, that every cause is having an effect. So effect is following by cause. And if there is no cause, there will be no effect.
There will be
but
no effect.
Ghazali says, have we seen any relationship between cause and effect? There is no nexus between cause and effect. We have seen cause with effect, effect with cause. But it never means that the effect has been there because of the cause. For example, if we keep a cotton, as he has given this example many times in his Incoherence of Philosophy, the Half of the Philosopher, he says that if this cotton is wet, it will not burn. In the same way, he says that cause is not followed by effect by necessity. It may not sometimes, because finally, who is creating the effect? It is God. So God's will is more important.
Can you cite a single example where effect inclines over cause, where effect is more prominent than cause?
Ghazali has given so many examples. He says that there may be many causes for one effect. There may be not one cause. There may be unknown cause sometimes, and there may be cause which is taking a lot of time and it does not start. So, for example, there are several insects or snakes. Sometimes they come out from the dust, but we can't see the apparent cause of that. So it is not that every cause is followed necessarily by. as in the case of West, we have people like, David Hume. He later on said that a man goes to a desert, he finds a vase there, and then he concludes that some person might have come here and it is because of this, but he does not see that person there. So we can't find the cause and effect necessarily following each other. So we can say that cause was there and there was effect, but we can't say it was caused by cause.
Sir,
So
but
in this way,
once we discuss the concept of watch, or we imply the example of watch, we are very much sure that watch has got some mechanism. There are wind and springs and other machine parts which will actually add for the result.
yeah, but basically what was Ghazali's point was that to say that where there is cause, there is effect, and that should be immediate. He says it not be immediate, it may be later on. And secondly, we may not know many causes of many effects. There may be a thing which we don't about that, how the things take place in the world. Now after the theory of uncertainty principle, Poincare, he says that there are several causes which are unknown. There are several effects we do in modern times, uncertainty principle. And there are many scientists have also said about that. In the quantum physics also. So there are quantum jumps, and we don't know what is the cause of anything.
Fine, and when you cite quantum mechanics, it definitely means the mode of measurement changes the effect. For example, if an electron is moving, we are not measuring it. The result may be different, but the moment we start measuring the electrons, for example, if we are going to measure the momentum of an electron, if we don't measure, the result will be something different, but our measurement is going to disturb. But sir, that is the actual nature of science. You see, don't you believe that the times have changed? And we have come more closer to science, and philosophy is shrinking day by day. That's how Stephen Hawking in his book, The Theory of Everything, once pointed that the concept of universe, how universe came into being, was the subject of philosophy before 200 years, before 300 years, even before the time of Newton. But now, in order to understand an iota of universe, you need to go through vigorous mathematical training.
Yeah.
Now, there are certain things which are not, which are not in the good books of philosophers. The things have been simply torn out from the philosophy, and they have come into the domain of science. So, sir, your answer, we are a bit
But there's one point I would just mention there. Why Ghazali challenged the cause and effect? The reason was, there were philosophers, they were challenging miracles.
They were challenging
They
miracles.
were limiting the power of God.
They were
That God, no, it is not possible that there is fire and there's a man, Abraham, and he is thrown in fire and he is not affected by it. So he said God can do this because basically God is the ultimate power. So he can change. But in most cases, cause follows effect, effect follows cause.
So don't you believe that here at this very point, isn't it that as if he is following the property of fixity and stopping the inquiry by simply labeling it by as an divine act or act of God, and further it's reducing the more investigations or inquiries?
Basically, he never says that. If you see Ghazali's overall philosophy, he lays much emphasis on human will. He says man is responsible for his actions, and whatever comes in the world is because of the action of man. So man can't sit idle. But he says there are several matters where we can't understand the cause of many things. There may be cause of miracles, but we may not understand that. But deny, because we don't know, we can't deny that, and we can't limit the power of God. We should not imagine God like humans or the natural things. And as has been said by Lehman Oliver, he says there is supernatural cause in many things, not only natural cause. So that how he explains Ghazali's view about causation. So it can be debated further. Because then I have also worked on Ibn Rushd. I have translated his book, Fasul Maqal Fima Bain Sharif al-Hikmah itself. So he has tried to just explain it in a different way. And he says without cause, nothing is possible in the world. But Ghazali's intention was not to deny causation as such. He just wanted to show that there is a supernatural cause also, not only natural cause.
Okay, sir. The second thing is that, in your opinion, does Ghazali reject the use of reason entirely, or does he advocate for a specific role for rational thought within the context of faith? This is an important question.
This is an important question, and because I have done research on Imam Gazali, and I compared him with the people like Ibn Rushd. I have done a comparison of Ibn Rushd and Ghazali. Then I compared Ghazali with many scholars of the West and philosophers of the West, like Descartes, René Descartes, like Kant, like Pascal, and David Hume, and many others. And I have found that Ghazali has never challenged reason. At one place he says, how we can deny reason when Allah has praised reason. At another place he says, the example of reason is like eye, and example of Sharia is like sun. If you don't have eye, you can never have the vision of sun. So what there can't be a beautiful example of supporting reason as Ghazali has done.
But don't you think, sir, that if we extend this reason, if we go through this lineage, this divine will, it stops somewhere, or reason also stops somewhere? For example, I may be a great believer in God, but there are certain questions which even Russell poses, that the ultimate question will raise to who created God. Then we have to redefine the concept of God. Their reason ultimately fails.
Not only that, Ghazali in his many books like Al-Munkaz min al-Dalal and other books he has talked, because he has written so many books, more than 100. And in one book he says that there are three sources of knowledge. One source of knowledge is sense perception. But we don't understand many things through sense perception.
Bilkul.
Sometimes a rod looks tilted in water.
Exactly.
And during the night we find that snake is rope and rope is snake.
Exactly.
And in the same way, a joint person thinks that everything is yellow.
One more example is that if we touch an iron rod, it will seem colder to us instead by touching a wooden rod. But both are at the same temperature, both are at the same room temperature. Yes.
Then he gives very interesting example. He says that when we see sun, it seems like a bread. But when competitions have shown it is bigger than our earth. So our senses, sometimes deceive us. And then he says there is a second source of knowledge, that is reason. But reason also does not help us everywhere. For example, we want to see what is in the grave. So we said there is a dead body. We can't see whether he is being punished or he is being rewarded. In the same way, there are certain things which we can't understand through reason. Then there is third judge. He calls them judge. He calls Hakimi his. That is the judge of the sense perception. Then he calls Hakimi, Akal. That is the judge of reason. Then he says third person whom we call as Hakimi Wijdan, the judge of intuition. Several things we understand through, sixth sense. Sixth sense. And that's intuition.
That's what we call as gut feeling.
Gut feeling. And last is, judge of the revelation. Several things are being decided only by revelation, which we can't understand through reason. And then he gives example. He says there is measuring rod for everything. We can't measure vegetables through the scale through which we are just measuring gold. So there are scales.
There are
and
different
the best
rods.
scale for understanding the religious matters is revelation, not reason. Reason has limitations, as has been mentioned by Kant and others also later on.
Sir, isn't it very clear from your point that reason sometimes stops where faith and belief begins?
As it has been said by Kant, he made place for faith after criticizing reason. Because there is limitations for reason.
Okay, sir. Very nice, very nice. So we are going on the very right line. Sir, can you elaborate on Ghazali's critique of the philosophers and how he believed their rationalism could lead to misconceptions about Islamic teachings?
So, for example, Ghazali just wrote one book that is Maqasid Philosopher, and in that he showed that there are 20 problems on which we have differences with philosophers. And then he rejected them in his book, The Half of the Philosopher, that is Inquiries of Philosophers. And he says there are 17 matters where they have become heretical, but about 3 matters they have become infidels. So that is God's knowledge of particulars. There is no knowledge of God for particulars, only of universals. And resurrection of the soul is not of the body. Only soul will be resurrected on the day of judgment, not the body.
Not the body.
And third, he says that God has knowledge of universals and not the particulars. And one third one is I don't remember this time. 3 points he has just discussed with them as they have become infidels. But so far as the 17 matters are concerned, they have become heretical, like miracle, like other such type of things, like causation. So in this way, he criticizes them on the basis of reason, not on the basis of theology. You will find in his book that is The Half of the Philosopher. There he makes critique of the philosophers on the basis of the contradiction in the thought.
Oh.
He does not bring Quranic verses against them. He just brings logical and rational arguments. And he cuts reason through reason.
One thing common between all these philosophers, they were all theists. They were all believing in God, but their perspectives were different on looking at things in a very different manner or in a very different way.
You're right. Their reason was that they were following Aristotle. And I have studied philosophy in deep, with deep concern. Basically, they were challenging the authority of God. They were saying God, as has been said later on by Ibn Taymiyyah, they have rendered God weaker than the 10th intelligence.
Oh.
And they say the shirk of the philosophers was worse than the shirk of the people of Makkah and Medina before Islam. And because they made God weaker than the 10th intelligence. And they said that God does not know how the world is proceeding from him. and that's emanation, theory of emanation, 10 intelligences. So here there's no time to explain this. But basically, he was just not criticizing them because they were believing in reason, but that was having implications for the belief. And they were challenging the authority of God, and they were saying eternity of the world. I had forgotten. The third point was where they were being labeled as infidels by Ghazali, because they were believing this world is eternal. They said this world is created, it's not eternal. God is the only eternal being who has created the universe. And there were reasons why philosophers were saying that.
Well, it becomes the concept of, it becomes the philosophical point of quantum mechanics, because when you say universe is eternal, then we have to go on the timeline.
Yeah.
Then we have to discuss time and we'll be moving towards another question. Balance between faith and reason. How can we interpret Ghazali's views to find a balance between faith and rational inquiry?
Basically, Ghazali was the person who gave reason what was to do and faith what was to do. And as I mentioned about the 4 judges, he said there are several matters which can be only understood by reason, not anything else, not by some person, not even by intuition. And there are several matters which can be only understood by revelation, faith, as you said. But we have to give all these sources of knowledge their due. There are matters which belong to the unseen world, which belong only to faith and revelation. But the things which are of this world, for example, the worldly things, physical things, those can be discovered only through reason and sense perception and intuition. So in this way, he does not challenge reason, but he says there should be combination of both. For example, for faith, we need a revelation. But for science and other things, philosophy, we need reason. And how I can challenge reason when Allah is praising reason, he says many times at this point. And he also says that, as I mentioned, the example of reason is like eye, and the example of deen and sharia is like sun. If there is no eye, we can't have vision of the sun at all.
Okay, sir. I may add one more question to it. Sir, do you feel that science and religion are two different domains? Or you see some line of intersection?
Basically, Allah has created human beings for a purpose. They have been not created to become scientists or philosophers or theologians or Sufis or this or that. And science is growing. It is advancing with every passing day. Earlier science was different. Newtonian science was different.
Definitely.
Then
yes.
we have the science
given by Einstein, special theory of relativity,
especially
now quantum mechanics.
As you mentioned about Hawking, his brief history of time. I've gone through most of his books, and also Sagan and Charles Sagan and others, and Penrose and others.
Roger Penrose. Yes.
So they have just given different interpretation of science. If we depend on science, then we should have just remain stagnant there, where it was taken to by Aristotle, then by Newton and by others. So it means that science is growing, it is advancing, it is not static.
Yes,
and this question I had asked someone, that how you can make science as the criterion for religion, which is complete, but science is incomplete. Science is growing, and maybe after 10 years, 20 years or 100 years, we may have different interpretation about the universe. We still don't know whether we have come from the chimpanzees or what, evolution and the origin of species, or we have come from some other planet.
But sir, don't you feel that this is the greatness of science, that it has got a quality of rectification? It rectifies its own errors. For example, scientists there's nothing called sacred. There's nothing sacred book or holy book in science. So they don't feel disgusted when they seem that the old theory should be replaced by the new theory because of particular research. So it's the greatness of science.
That's good. Who challenged that? Plato, Galileo, and
yes, how they were treated by the church. Yes.
But according to Prophet of the Salam, who was given this Nobel Prize, he said there was no such inquisition in Islam. They have been tortured sometimes because of their doctrinal reasons, not because of scientific reasons. Rather, Islam has always supported scientists. They have been supported, and Muslims have supported. There has been no inquisition as we have in case of the Christian history. So in this way, because of the West, because there was bifurcation between religion and science, and there was the fight between church and scientists and philosophers. But in our part of the world, our Ibn Sina was a scientist and he was Hafiz of the Quran as well. Ibn Khaldun, he was a great scholar of Islam and he was a sociologist. Ibn Hassan, he was a great physicist, but he was also a good religious man. In the same way, we have Al-Khwarizmi, that algorithm after his name. We have nowadays, that's a very
I want to respond. Okay.
So far as you said that there are several matters, because as I mentioned nowadays, as Bertrand Russell would say, because I have gone through Western philosophy also, Bertrand Russell will say what is given to us, that is sense data. We do know the things what exactly are. This time we don't know whether sun is existing or not, because we see the sun which was existing 8 minutes before.
8 minutes before, yes.
So in this way, even the physical things are not sure whether they are existing or not. And what is given to us? Sense data, not the actual thing. So in this way, when you make criterion for everything sense perception, how you can believe in things which are beyond sense perception?
One thing there is, sir, very much what Bertrand Russell said, but you see the advanced labs, the technologies, they are completely in agreement with the data. That's why we can predict the things, the future things and happening. For example, we can predict when the solar eclipse will happen, even for 2000 years from now. So there's nothing what he says that may be philosophical, but exactly science is working on the proper lines, science is working on the proper guidelines. I'm not simply claiming that science and religion cannot go in a harmonious way. They can go. But my question is that, for example, it reminds me once again the question of Stephen Hawking. He says that, what is the nature of Earth or the existence of Earth before the whole universe? It's nothing. He gives an example of Earth is nothing but simply a grain of sand in a long beach stretched up to kilometers. If you will simply put a grain of sand in your and keep it in your pocket, is the sand somehow going to be affected? No. So if Earth vanishes, for example, in a jiffy, Earth is there at 10 a.m. and Earth is not there at 10 a.m. How is it going to affect the entire universe? In no way. Then how do you feel that the God, which you claim to be your personal God, is creating his whole attention towards the Earth and not towards the whole universe? That's what Einstein also believed in. Spinoza concept of God. Sir, what are your views about
basically,
that?
if I quote your own, Stephen Hawking, he says, once upon a time, philosophers used to discuss what is the origin of the life, the origin of the universe. Now they discuss what is language, what a come down. So science has become that much limited in the sensory knowledge. It can't think beyond that. So you can measure these things through your rods, through your laboratory. So just one point, just to explain. Basically, when you are just using the rod of reason or sense perception to understand those things which are beyond reason, and if you can't, can you explain, even this Stephen Hawking, he had the motor neuron disease. So what caused that? So, for example, why only he became like that? Why not other people? So I think that if you just want to think everything can be understood by when he says what a come down in our scientific theories, now we are discussing what is language. And in the logical positivists, they say the things which are not given to our senses, those are nonsensical. Yes. And it means your statement is also nonsensical because it has been not proved by our experience. So in this way, I think that we have to understand there are realms of knowledge. There are several realms of knowledge which we can understand through science. But there are several realms of knowledge which we can understand only through religion. And so far as, but religion should be also rational, that's true. Religion should not stop scientists from going ahead in their scientific discoveries. And science has not unraveled their stories, as has been said by Einstein, that as we are just playing with the pebbles on the bank of the shore of the sea. Such is our knowledge. So what type of knowledge about the universe we have come? Prophets also went to Mirage, and now people are going to moon, but what they are bringing from there? Some stones, and he brought the whole information about the whole universe, about life after death, before life, what will happen after.
But sir, that comes in the domain of faith.
That's okay. So
that's not a matter of science.
Okay.
But one thing is
science can't become a criterion for those things which are beyond its scope, and we should not make science like religion and religion like science.
Exactly. One thing which I want to add, that you are supposed to give science a credit because it's very recent.
Okay.
The inquiry is from the last 100 years. Religion has been there from centuries. So science is in its infancy stage, and the moment it starts growing, maybe the questions which are very nagging this time, they may be very simple to us. In next 10 years or next 20 years or next 50 years, we may reveal some more information about these questions which are puzzling us this time. Okay. So coming to sir, next question. What do you believe that has been long-term impact of Ghazali's ideas on Islamic philosophy and theology?
Basically, I had written a book a few years back that was forwarded by Professor Osman Bakr, who is one of the great scientists, a student of Hussein Nasr. And he is now director of Islam University, Malaysia, and I am also working there. So I had named the book Muslim Philosophy Before and After Ghazali. Ghazali was the turning point. People don't give him credit. And I have studied Ghazali from different angles, from scientific angle, from philosophical angle, from theological angle, from mystical angle. And then I have shown it was Ghazali who has given a new shape to Muslim philosophy. Before that, people were slavishly following, Greek philosophy, Greek, logic. But it was Ghazali who challenged that philosophy, and he had a very sound, argumentation against them. And according to Shubli, it was Ghazali who silenced Greek philosophers for 100 years. Had not Ibn Rushd appeared on the scene, philosophy would have died for all time to come, in the West as well, as it died in the East.
Yes.
So in this way, it means that Ghazali just presented such a model of thinking and balanced approach to everything. And that is Mizan Amal he gave. One of the book is named by Mizan Amal. And he believed in the balanced approach. We should give science whatever is due to it, philosophy whatever is due to it, whatever is due to religion we should give it. And in this way, Ghazali has impacted almost all the aspects of Muslim life, and not only Muslims. About 3,000 people have worked on Ghazali from different parts of the world. A Jewish lady, Hawa Lazarus, she spent whole of her life studying Ghazali, and she wrote a book studying about Ghazali. And Montgomery Watt, he wrote a book, a Muslim intellectual. And then Humayi, Jalal Humayi, Ghazali Nama, Fararaz Madrasa, and even Emin Roy, he has said about Ghazali so many things, that he was the great man and great rationalist. Every person in the world has praised Ghazali because Ghazali's thought had such an impact, global impact, not only limited to Muslims. As Shubli says, mostly the Western people are liking Ghazali's philosophy, but Eastern people like his theology. So they were very much impressed by the philosophy of Ghazali, and lot of work has been done on Ghazali. There was some element in him. There was some strength in Ghazali. For that reason, people have worked on him. And in this way, about 3,000 books have been written on Ghazali, and many works are being written in different languages, in French, in German, in Latin,
in different languages,
and in Urdu also, in Persian also. I have seen, because when I was doing research on Imam Gazali, and I did my research on Ghazali's impact on Western philosophy, and I have shown these philosophers as pygmies before Ghazali, because we are a little bit feeling inferior. But when you are a student of philosophy, I have studied Western philosophy in JNU, Jawaharlal University. My teachers, they had come from America and London and what. So I have no fear of philosophy. I am not impressed by these atheists. What argument they have? I had a good debates with atheists in different parts of the world.
Very nice.
And they had many places. Even I had talked to feminists like Amna Wadud in Indonesia and also in Kashmir. And she could not stand before me. I had my own arguments. I said that you are talking about that God who is still living, but your Nietzsche has died already. God has killed him. So my God is strong. Eternal. So my point is that in this way, Ghazali's impact had been very great on not only Muslims, and whatever philosophy after Ghazali came, that was influenced by Ghazali till date. It may be Iqbal, it may be Ibn Rushd had, and I had shown it. Ibn Rushd's agenda was set by Ghazali in one of my articles, because after working on Ghazali, I wrote two important books. One was on Ibn Rushd. His book, that is Fasul Maqal, I translated that, The Attitude of Islam Towards Science and Philosophy. There is one of the 3 books in the world which are being quoted widely in the world. And in this way, that book is very important. So there he showed that there is a reconciliation between religion and philosophy. And second book I wrote afterwards on Ibn Taymiyyah. Because I believe in all these great people, we should study them seriously. We should not have bias. And it was Ghazali.
Without any prejudices.
Ghazali had set agenda for Ibn Rushd also. And I have shown what are the areas where they are reconciled, can be reconciled. There are only few areas, but agenda was set, as has been said by MacDonald. He says Ibn Rushd was a beggarly compiler before Ghazali. Beggarly compiler. MacDonald is a great philosopher, scientist, writer. So in this way, Ghazali had a lot of impact. And he had not impact only on philosophers, but Sufis also. And also poetry also. And he set agenda for whole Islamic world. And his Ihya al-Ulumuddin, that became the magnum opus of Ghazali. And it has been said, if all the knowledge vanishes from the world, there is only Ihya al-Ulumuddin. We can reconstruct the whole knowledge from that book. And one man becomes astonished at how he just composed that book when he had left the world for 10 years. He was wandering those days, and he wrote that book. And that book contains everything under earth. So whatever you need, for example, what is the approach to science? What is the approach to philosophy? What is the approach to life? What are the educational norms, and how you should go for good education? what are the secular sciences, what are the mundane sciences, and he talks about that. And I wrote an article on Ghazali, which was published in Hamdard Islamicus. So that was Ghazali's approach towards natural sciences. And I have shown that Ghazali has never opposed natural sciences or science as such. He has opposed that we should not make science criterion of things which are beyond science. So in this way, Ghazali's impact has had been on every aspect of human life, and in every masjid, in every khanqah, you will listen the name of Ghazali, not Ibn Sina, not Ibn Rushd.
Yes,
although Ibn Rushd's book is also included in the syllabi of many universities, Islamic universities, his book Bidayatul Mujtahid. But so far as philosophy is concerned, he is not there renowned as Ghazali is.
Okay, sir. Thank you very much, sir. We are getting really enlightened. We are learning so many things from your good self. Sir, one more question is there. In what ways do you think Ghazali's thoughts on the relationship between divine will and human reasoning are relevant to contemporary discussions in theology and philosophy?
Lot of relevance of Ghazali nowadays, I tell you honestly. And as a student of comparative religions and philosophies, because I do study only one philosophy, I study all the philosophies. I have taught religions of the world for about 30 years in Kashmir University, Central University, Islamic University. And I have visited more than 100 universities of India and other parts of the world. And I had interaction with all type of people in Turkey, in Indonesia, in Malaysia, and USA, and Nepal, and Maldives, and almost Bangladesh. So in this way, I could find that Ghazali is more relevant because he is culturally relevant to us. He is not that much overawed by philosophy or foreign philosophies, alien philosophies, as Ibn Sina and Ibn Al-Farabi was. And he is not as antagonistic towards science and philosophy as we had Ibn Salah and others, people like that. So in this way, his approach is very well balanced. And he is also for dialogue, interreligious dialogue, interfaith dialogue. He wants
peace and
harmony, and he talks about that. So we should go to other communities, we should talk to them, there's nothing wrong with that. And apart from that, he has tried to combine all the aspects of knowledge at one place. That is theological, philosophical, spiritual, mystical, and also scientific. So in this way, and then poetic as well, because he has written also books in Persian language, like Saada and other books. So in this way, in his book, especially his Laysatul Muluk in Persian, he has sent the letters to the kings. And if you take all those books together, and you will find his approach is very much balanced. Although there are areas, because he was a human being, he was not a prophet, there are, especially his ahadith are concerned about them, it has been said by Zainuddin Araqi, Lam Ajad Lahu Sanada. Many ahadith he is quoting which has no authentication. And Zahabi says, I have found thousands like this ahadith. But overall, Ghazali's approach to life and universe and science and philosophy and culture and everything was very much balanced. And he is not going to the extremes. He is trying to strike balance between the extremes, and he is culturally very much relevant to modern times. And he is not just taking only one, he is not taking sides with this thought or that thought. He is saying, as for example, one of his quotations, I always use that in my lectures. He has said that, Hazrat Ali has said, you know the truth so that you may know the truthful. Then he made a principle. Marifatul haq birijal should be not there. Marifatul rijal bil haq. You should know people by truth, not truth by people. People should not be made as the criteria of truth. Truth should be made a criteria of judging people whether they are right or wrong. And this is such a great principle of freedom of thought. So you should not make cult as your basis of things. As we have in modern times, we are cult worshippers. We are worshipping personalities. He said, no, you should go the thought, see the thought. If thought is good, okay, nothing wrong with that. And then he says, Al-Manidatu aslu da'in la dawala. The, animosity is the root cause of the disease which has no remedy. So you should not have hatred towards anyone. You should love people, see people, and don't be adamant. And don't hate people, don't be inimical to the people, truth especially.
It is a great message.
Great message. So in this way, Ghazali is very much relevant to modern times, and he is relevant to all parts of the Islamic world. For example, if you will ask me, because I have worked also on Ibn Rushd, I have worked on Ibn Taymiyyah. Ghazali is acceptable to Iranians also. He is acceptable to Central Asian people also.
He's got a universal appeal.
Yeah, he is acceptable to the West also, and as has been said by Montgomery Ward, he says West can't find a sympathetic guide like Ghazali in modern times. Says Montgomery Watt in his intellectual, Ghazali the intellectual. And Ghazali can be a guide to the Western people, what to say of the Eastern people. So in this way, as has been said in Arabic, Al-Fazlu ma shuhida bil ada. Greatness is that which is being witnessed by the enemies. Adversaries of Ghazali say that he is the best guide for the Christians of the world. So what to say about Muslims? So as has been said by about the Mullah Rumi, as has been said by Graham Fuller in his book World Without Islam, he says although America is in war with Islam, but the best seller there is Mullah Rumi's Masnavi. So in this way, Ghazali is conquering minds of the people belonging to all parts of the world, and Ghazali is very much relevant. And I believe that if we take Ghazali, Ibn Rushd and Ibn Taymiyyah together, they can become a perfect guide for modern Muslims throughout the world.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. This was very nice explanation, and I'm highly satisfied by your answer. Sir, now moving to the next question is that, what's your interpretation of Ghazali's legacy? Do you believe he has been misrepresented in the discourse surrounding rationalism and faith?
No, I will just cite an interesting story about that.
Actually, we were discussing all these things from the very first question. Now let's conclude by...
I will relate a very interesting story. I was in the Hamdard University. I was doing my research where great orientalists used to come there. And my supervisor was Professor Sayyid Wahiduddin from Hyderabad, who was knowing German language and he has studied in different universities of the world West. So he was always talking to this, and once we went to a dawa there was some festival, there was some marriage ceremony in the JNU, and Professor Shafi Agwani, he was a vice chancellor those days of JNU, and then I went with my teacher to attend that ceremony. And when I met this Professor Muhammad Shafi Agwani, so he was a little bit rationalist and modernist Muslim, and then my teacher introduced me to him that he is working on Ghazali. He said, you are working on Ghazali, who is the executioner in chief in Islam. Because this point has been mentioned by Arbery. I said, sir, he is not executioner chief in Islam. He has never executed reason. So you are misrepresenting. Your approach is not right about Ghazali. Same thing happened when I was in Patiala. There was one conference going on. It was a history congress, and Professor Irfan Habib from Al-Ghazali,
the great historian,
had gone there once to just attend the conference. I was as a student those days doing lecturer just Kashmir University. He said that Ghazali has said much nonsense. He said in the lecture. I was so much infuriated by this because I was knowing what is Ghazali. Then I just wrote an article, has Ghazali spoken nonsense? Then I sent that to the
Irfan Habib.
Not Irfan, I sent to that journal. It was published. And I brought that article and showed him, see whether he has said nonsense or not. He said, you are right, please forgive me. So problem is that Ghazali is much misinterpreted. And as a student of Ghazali, I have studied Ghazali, and I have just taken, cognizance of all this criticism. Then I have come out with such a thesis where I have shown Ghazali is not against reason or philosophy or the progress in the Muslim world. And he had impacted not only Muslims but the Western scholars, philosophers, what to say about Muslims. So in this way, he is not understood and he is not judged properly. There is bias against him. And now people are understanding, some of the people are coming with their arguments. And especially I have done that work. So I have written 5 books on Ghazali. And those books have been published and those are found. Those have been even acknowledged by Brill. That is this Netherlands, one of the great publishers of the world, Netherlands. They have accepted that and they have shown my books in their annotated bibliographies about supplement on Muslim philosophy, Islamic philosophy.
As reference.
Reference that this is one of the book. These are the books which can be read so that to understand Ghazali in proper way. So in this way, I feel that Ghazali has been not understood or represented properly. He has been misrepresented. And there's a lot of disinformation about Ghazali. But when we see his books and go deeply into his thought and his legacy, we find a great man who is relevant for all times to come, because his fountain of knowledge used to be Quran, Sunnah, and the legacy of the Sufis and the philosophers, and he has imbibed good separate from all, and as has been said in one of the Indian texts, that let noble thoughts come from all sides. So Ghazali believed in that, And he was not against anyone. He studied philosophy, he studied science. But when he found that there is something wrong and he critiqued that, he did not slavishly.
That was his right.
He did not slavishly follow that whatever is coming as was done by other philosophers of the Islamic world. And for the reason he is a great mind. He's a creative mind. He's original. He believes in ijtihad, not in taqleed. So in this way, his knowledge and his thought is more relevant, but it needs to be rediscovered. And
Commonly being said that faith and reason are poles apart. Faith has its own domain, reason has its own domain, and people say that we don't see any line of intersection between science and religion, faith and belief. And belief is, you can be believing all your life in the things which never existed. So belief can be misleading, but it's ultimately the knowing, the science, which will never mislead you. In this context, our fourth question is like this, sir. How can we interpret Ghazali's views to find a balance between faith and rational inquiry?
So first of all, I would like to say that Islam has never discouraged science. The interesting thing is that when Prophet ﷺ came from Makkah to Medina, people were pollinating palm trees in a specific way. Prophet ﷺ asked them, how you do this? The Sahaba said, we do like this, like that. And Prophet ﷺ told them, you should do like this, not like that. And they did accordingly. But the yield was not good that year. Then they asked Prophet ﷺ, have you said it as an Arab or as a prophet? He said, I have said it as an Arab. Antum a'lamu bi umuri dunyakum. You know the worldly matters better than me. My domain is to guide you, then you can do any action. And secondly, Prophet ﷺ, when doctor came, a patient came to Medina, his name was Haris bin Kalda. He was a non-Muslim. Prophet ﷺ told the Sahaba, you should go to get treated by him. He did not say they should go for amulets and this and that. No. And he said Allah has not created any disease for which He has not created the treatment. And we have to go. And Ghazali says, a person who does not know what is medical science, what is medication, he will never understand the verse of the Quran. Why is our marriage to power yashfeh? When I become sick, Allah makes me good. So only a person who knows medical science, he can understand the meaning of this word. So in this way, basically, there is relationship between faith and reason and science. But science has a domain, faith has a domain. But Islam has never contradicted science. And it was because of Muslims that the Dark Ages were changed into Renaissance and Enlightenment. West was reeling under Dark Ages, as has been mentioned by people like, Robert Bacon and also Williams and then Lewis and then, Ram Lando and Brepalt and Sorton. They have said it was because of Islam, because of Quran, that people started dealing with science. Otherwise, there were superstitions. Even the philosophy of Plato, that was based on deduction. It was according to Iqbal that Islam had given the concept of inductive method, which reached through Ibn Hazm to the Spare, and afterwards it reached the West, and the scientific revolution started. So in this way, to say that there is different domain of faith and there is different domain of science, although there is no doubt, but Islam has never stopped us from progressing, and Islam has accepted science. And it has been said, if you have any argument, you bring for us. And it has been said by Quran that, Ya mashar al-jinn wal insi sadatum an tanfuzu min aqtari samawat, fanfuzu la tanfuzuna illa bisultan. O people, bands of the jinni and the humans, if you are able to cross the boundaries of heaven and earth, do it. But you should have sultan for that. If you get power, there's nothing wrong. So Islam has never stopped us from going ahead in science or going for medication. So, but it is true that science is science, religion is religion. We should not mix these because science is always growing. It has not reached to its climax, but religion has been completed by Allah. And religion can be criterion about the matters which pertain to the unseen world. In science, we can just go ahead, as Quran said, "Wa'idu lahum mastata'tum min quwwah." You prepare all the items of force and power for doing good things in the world.
But don't you think that such science has gone much ahead? And that's why the inclination towards atheism is growing, because you see, certain things which science now claims, not claims but practically proves, are very much against religion or against all organized religions. For example, the concept of heaven and hell, the punishment in the grave, and all such things. Because do you feel that these things cannot be simply evaluated by the rods created by science. They are metaphysical in nature, and science science will never touch these realities, these hidden things.
As you know, as a student of science, you will be knowing that when there was bifurcation between church and religion, there was reason for that, and that was genuine reason. Because the churchmen were stopping people from going for scientific inquiry. I recognize once again, and we need a appraisal of Ghazali to present him before the world as one of the great minds of the world, universe.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So, my concluding remarks will be that we are all together enlightened by meeting Professor Sahab, and the way he discoursed the things, it was really a beacon of light for us. And many misconceptions regarding Imam Ghazali were altogether eradicated. We are highly thankful, and we wish to meet you again and
Thank you,
again
inshallah.
on some different issues.
It was a
Inshallah.
pleasure. It was a
Thank you,
pleasure.
sir. Thank you very much.